Well, you guys never expected me to review a toilet like this, but here we are, already. This is the Kohler Reach One Piece toilet. A toilet, as far as I'm aware, was introduced in 2019, and of course is still made to this very day. This is one of those weird one-piece toilets that you probably would never expect to see from Kohler, considering that they're super rare to find. Even something like a Santa Rosa Class 5 would be pretty hard to find, because they're not super common. But this one is a little bit more different because it has the bizarre Trapway opening. We'll touch on that later. Oh man, I got a lot to talk about, so let's get this review started. Spoilers, it's terrible. So the overall design of this toilet really isn't anything too special until you get to the side, which just looks weird. It has a skirted trapway, which means it's concealed. And I don't know why they design toilets like this with this design. It just sticks out like a sore thumb, and not in a good way. But everything else, nothing too special. Now for the elephant in the room, the trapway opening. What were they thinking with this? You can easily tell it's based on the Kohler well of light, which for those who don't know was an early 1.5, 1.6 gallon toilet introduced in 1989, and it was a big failure. It was replaced with the Kohler Ingenium flushing system in the late 1990s, which is far superior compared to the Kohler well of light. I felt like this trapway opening design was intentional to begin with, as it looks relatively similar to a well of light, except it's more modern in a way. The trapway passages, on the other hand, mostly the same as any other Class 5. A dumb downside this toilet has is the ridiculously low water area that it has. It literally is just a small circle, and that's it. What were they thinking with that? The tank parts are pretty standard for a Kohler Class 5, the only difference being the handle pointing outwards. I don't know why they just didn't go with a standard Kohler handle like you would see on like a Wellworth or Highline. Instead, they went with a Cimarron handle for whatever reason. The fill valve is basically a fluid master with a Kohler branding, and of course the dreaded aqua piston. So the parts are pretty standard for a Class 5. Let's have a look at a flush. Let's first do a press and release. Unsurprisingly, it's trash. Now we're going to hold the handle down. It's still kind of terrible, but it at least has an extended flush. To the surprise of no one, the pulling and siphon power of this toilet is absolutely terrible on a press and release. Go figure, not enough water, and the design just doesn't work. On an extended flush, it's just not much better. The siphon is just super choppy, and even though it does slope into the trapway opening, the opening is just kind of small. So it doesn't help out at all. So I'm just going to say, whether you press and release or extend the flush, the performance overall is absolute crap. Are any of you shocked? No. Honestly, I was expecting it to be worse. But I will say, every time I've used one of these, I've almost clogged it. Every time. Again, this trapway opening is the biggest problem. What were they thinking with this? The funny thing is the trapway itself is 2 1/8 inches. But the trapway opening is just super tight and super small, and it's the biggest problem with the trapway overall. No one should be surprised that the bowel rinse is terrible, but I'll show it off anyway. Again, the biggest problem is the pointed down ramjets and the application of the bowel rinse itself. It's terrible. Stains scatter often back on this back rim here, but even in the front, like in this area right here. It's the biggest problem with most Kohler toilets like this. And of course, this toilet is no different. It's predictable, but pathetic. Another angle, because why not? And that is the Kohler Reach One Piece toilet. Man, modern Kohler residential toilets are terrible, but they put out all the stuff to make this one even worse than all the others. Every problem is here, but made worse. And a design that just makes you go, why was this even made? Well, that's modern Kohler for you, and it's only going to get worse. But let's put this toilet into the grading scale. Let's grade it. The overall design of this toilet is about as plain as you can get. It's so boring. The one thing I also don't like about modern Kohler One Pieces is that the back end of the Trapway passage sticks out like a sore thumb. I don't know why they go for this design, but I don't like it. Ignoring that, the design gets a 5. The tank parts are pretty standard for a modern Kohler. A simple handle, bill valve, and of course the dreaded aqua piston. I pretty much complained about this piece of garbage enough already. It's unreliable, super cheap, very flimsy, and causes nothing but problems. So, as always, the parts get a 3. So this has the same quality control issues as any other Kohler Class 5 toilets. Inconsistent ramjets and all other problems are still here, but now with added performance issues. Thanks, Kohler! Overall though, the quality control is virtually the same. It's a 3. It's very crappy. I'm going to be serious about this claim. Whoever thought it was a good idea to bring back this Trapway opening design needs to be fired on the spot. Because who in the world thought this was a good idea? This is like taking an old design like the PT Cruiser and making it more modern. Because who asked for that? That's basically my proposition here. Who asked for the well-worth-light Trapway opening to be returned in a modern format? No one! The Trapway passages are virtually the same as any other Kohler Class 5, but now it's ruined by this horrendous Trapway opening. That's why it's getting a 3 instead. I don't know how they did it, but they pulled it off. They made it already trash flush even worse. This is an impossible feat I never thought was even possible, but they did the impossible. They made an already awful flush even worse. So, obviously, on the press and release, the flush is a 1. On the high-end scale, it gets a whopping 2. Yeah, do I really need to explain myself here? Somehow the pulling and siphon power remains consistent on this one. On the low-end scale, it's horrible. The flush is way too short and the siphon is very choppy, so it obviously gets a 2. On the high-end scale, like I said, it really isn't much better. Sure, the slow Trapway does slightly help it, but not by too much. At most, it's a 4. No matter what flush you offer on this toilet, the performance is still the same. It is absolute crap. Honestly, I was expecting it to be worse. But don't get me wrong, every time I put up with this thing, constantly, every single time, it has almost clogged. This is literally the definition of what you see is pretty much what you'll get. But honestly, I was expecting the worst. So I'm kind of surprised about that, but unsurprisingly, it's still crap. On both scales, it's a 3. Yep, as always, the ball run still sucks. The application of the ramjets as well as the pointed down ramjets don't help out anything. As always, the ball run sucks. On the low end scale, it's easily a 1, but on the high end scale, it's a 2. Yeah, what you see is what you get. The survivability sucks. On the low end scale, it's a 2. On the high end scale, it's a 3. Now we're going to take an overall look at this toilet and see if it's worth buying this absolute toilet today. On the low end scale, this toilet is basically the definition of what you see is what you get. Goodness gracious, putting up with this toilet is a nightmare on a press and release. It's about as worthless as it looks, and it's easily a 1 on the low end scale. On the high end scale, it's still awful. Go figure. I mean, seriously, who thought this toilet was a good idea? Especially bringing back the well-worth-light Trapway opening for this toilet in a more refined manner. Everything about this toilet is dreadful. The flush, the performance, the bowl rinse, the pulling factor, everything about this toilet is awful. I don't know who thought this toilet was a good idea. From start to finish. This should have never even left the drawing board at all. Maybe make it as a miniature toilet as a joke, but not make it an actual product that people can buy. Oh, I haven't even got over the worst part yet. Let's take a look at the value of this toilet. Yup, saying that this is a scam is an understatement. So you're basically paying that much for a toilet that's objectively worse than every other Class 5 combined. And generally speaking, most Class 5s are horrible anyways. So you're basically buying an even worse Class 5. Good job, Kohler. So, should you buy it? Absolutely not. That being said, this toilet is an absolute monstrosity. That's why the final value on the high-end scale is a 2. Now let's take a look at the final scores of the Kohler Reach One Piece toilet. On the low-end scale, the final score is a 24 out of 100, but on the high-end scale, it's a 30 out of 100. Well, folks, this is easily one of the worst modern Kohler toilets ever made. Generally speaking, most Class 5 toilets suck, but they somehow managed to make it even worse with this particular toilet. Everything is a complete downgrade, and that isn't really saying much to begin with. I never thought that Kohler can go beyond the bottom of the barrel, but somehow, here we are.